All right, welcome back to the Problem With, and this right here is our weekly breakdown we call Off the Record. Now, if you're new here or you just been scrolling past my stuff wondering, is this guy too political? Let me go ahead and clear that up for you. Yeah, I am. I am political, but not the way that you think. Like, this segment is not about left versus right. It's not about towing party lines or spitting out polished takes for clicks. Off the record exists because too many people in power are out here lying straight to our faces. And too many folks in the media are too scared or too compromised or too comfortable to call it what it is. So I will. Like, off the record means we have no filters, no excuses, no carefully rehearsed talking points from some PR team at the Capitol. This is where I talk about the real stuff, the things that are breaking people down, bleeding communities dry, and somehow still getting sold to us like they are the solutions. And this is a space where peel back the headlines and ask, okay, but what's really going on? Because every week there's a pile of news stories, and most of them either get buried, whitewashed, or twisted into something unrecognizable. And meanwhile, we're expecting to just keep scrolling, keep clapping, keep pretending that everything's fine. Well, of course, I'm not going to do that. I'm not pretending, and I'm definitely not staying quiet. So in this episode, we're going to talk about what happened this past week. This week, we got ICE raids tearing families apart again. We've got bills for veterans getting blocked again. We got children being forced into labor while billionaires get tax breaks. Then the Supreme Court still doing the gun lobby bit in Florida. Of course, Florida is turning classrooms into ideological war zones again. But we're not going to start there. We're going to start with just happened, like literally breaking news as I was recording. The one that's about to start another war. And it's coming from the same man who already gave us 4 years of lies, corruption, and chaos wrapped in a red hat and sold us patriotism. Let's talk about Trump and his attack on Iran. So let's begin with the breaking news of today, Saturday, June 21st. This happened as before I even wanted to start recording. I wanted to actually record on Sunday, but this happened and man, some breaking news. So let's strip away the spin that because I'm tired of watching the headlines play dress up while the world is burning all of a sudden. Let's go back to June 16. Donald Trump stood on a podium, surrounded by American flags and empty promises, and said he would wait 2 weeks before making any decisions about military actions against Iran. His exact words, that he'd exhaust diplomacy. He'd consult with the Pentagon, take his time, weigh his options, all the presidential sounding stuff. Now let's fast forward to 5 days, not 2 weeks, not even one. And the US B-2 stealth bombers are lighting up the Iranian skyline. He orders airstrikes on 3 major nuclear sites, Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. These aren't just symbolic targets. These are hardened underground nuclear facilities, places that require bunker-busting bombs. You don't wake up one morning and say, let's hit Fordow. That takes weeks of planning, probably longer. And what does Trump do after launching these strikes? Oh, he brags on stage to a crowd about how Fordow is gone, completely obliterated. Then he adds, like it's a thread on a WWE promo, there are more targets unless Iran surrenders. Let me say this again for the folks who are still holding out to hope that this guy somehow represents anti-war populism. He said 2 weeks. He gave it 5 days, and he launched airstrikes on nuclear facilities. This man says 2 weeks every time he gets confronted about a major decision. Every time. Go back. There's compilations of this man saying 2 weeks. And like this is not that's not calculated diplomacy. It's like and that's premeditated escalation. That's war, and it's war sold to you as restraint. And of course, the global fallout came immediately. Iran called it a gross violation of international law and made it crystal clear their nuclear program won't stop. Again, they weren't building nuclear bombs. They use a nuclear power just like we do here in the United States for energy. Big difference for whatever the Fox News spin is. Russia is now involved. Yes, Russia. They call these strikes reckless. Even Israel, who's been pushing for tougher action on Iran, started backpedaling after the attack. They praised it publicly, sure, but in private, Israeli officials are warning against further escalation, which tells you just how nervous they are about what Trump unleashed. Even the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said it plainly, and I quote, "This is dangerous escalation that threatens not just the region, but the entire world." And he's right, because this wasn't just a strike. It was a spark. And Trump lit the match. Now, let's talk about the real kicker here. The part that I really hope you don't notice. Congress never approved this. Not one debate, not one vote. Because technically, this needed to be approved by Congress because this is under the War Powers Resolution. The president can respond to immediate threats, but if you're planning a non-emergency military strike, especially one this massive, you need congressional authorization. And this wasn't a sudden reaction to Iranian missiles being launched to add our troops. This was a calculated hit on nuclear infrastructure in a sovereign country. And Trump bypassed every check and balance to do it. It's not just wrong, it's not illegal, that's unconstitutional. And now lawmakers from both parties are furious. And it's funny too, because the Republicans are the ones who voted for this man. They didn't want to keep him accountable, but here we go. Senator Tim Kaine has already introduced a resolution to bar Trump from launching any further strikes without congressional approval. AOC called it a grave violation of the Constitution and congressional war powers, clear grounds for impeachment. Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader in the House, also a coward, demanded classified briefings and went on record saying, and I quote, "President Trump misled the country, failed to seek a congressional authorization, and risked American entanglement in a potential disastrous war." He's so cowardly. Like, impeach. Just call for impeachment, Hakeem Jeffries. Do your job. And this is just a left-wing piling on. Even Representative Thomas Massie, a Republican from Kentucky, hardcore libertarian guy, called it unconstitutional. And then we have Bernie Sanders, and he nailed it. And I quote, "The only entity that can take this country to war is the United States Congress. That is what the Constitution demands. What Trump did is grossly illegal." So now, Congress is scrambling. They're invoking the War Powers Act. They're trying to pass resolutions to prevent further strikes. But let's be real, that's after the damage is already done. The missiles already flew, the targets already burned, and that begs the question, if a president can plan and launch a full-on strike on another nation without a vote, what's to stop the next one? What happens when someone even more unhinged, even more reckless gets that power? What precedent what precedent just got set? Like, we're not going to stop this? Because this isn't just about foreign policy. Like, this is the presidential power and the total collapse of congressional oversight. This is what dictatorships look like. So let's make something clear. This is an impeachment because I don't like the guy. This is an impeachment because of policy differences. This is impeachment because the man just launched a war with no approval, no debate, and no endgame. He said 2 weeks, and that was the con. The bombs were always coming, and now we enter a new phase of American empire, where one man can snap his fingers and drop bombs on nuclear facilities like it's a campaign stunt. So no, this wasn't a decisive strike. This was an executive overreach. It was unconstitutional, and it was deliberate. And now, once again, we wait for the fallout, literally and politically. Now let's talk about what's happening in America, in the United States right now. While headlines scream about Iran and cable news go wall to wall with election coverage, again, something else is happening. It's quietly and deliberately. Donald Trump's mass deportation campaign is underway. And I don't mean he's considering it. I mean, it's already happening. And it's happening fast. Over the last week, ICE agents have swept through LA, Miami, Houston, Chicago, New York, Atlanta, and more, hitting immigrant-heavy neighborhoods like a military invasion. Did you notice what's going on here, guys? Like the cities that I just named? Heavily Democrat, heavily Hispanic, heavily immigrant. This is not a coincidence. And this is just not business as usual. Again, it's targeted, federalized, and it's absolutely strategic. Because Trump knows exactly what he's doing. He's not just trying to enforce the law, he's trying to send a message. And this operation, codenamed Homeland Recovery, super fascist of him, isn't about deporting violent criminals, it's about performing power. And here's how it works. 1. Agents are moving in unmarked vans, wearing minimal or no identification and refusing to present warrants, in direct violation of federal standards. 2. Detainees, including legal residents, dreamers, and even U.S. citizens, are being picked up without warning, without lawyers, and without informing families. 3. Once picked up, they're moved across state lines within hours, dumped in faraway detention centers, often with no access to phones or outside contact. These are disappearances, and that's not a hyperbole, that's the word, disappearances. Because when someone is arrested and no one, not their family, not their lawyer, not even their employer, knows where they were taken, that's not live law enforcement, that's state sanction abduction and kidnapping. So let's talk the numbers. ICE claims this is about clearing up the streets, or cleaning up the streets, whatever they want to say. That this crackdown in so-called criminal illegals. But let's look at their own data. Over 6,200 people detained in the past 2 weeks. Only 11% had any kind of criminal history. And most of those crimes, expired registration, traffic violations, misdemeanor paperwork errors, immigration status violations. So 9 out of 10 people were simply living their lives, working, going to school, raising families. One teenager in Dallas was picked up on the way to band camp. It was a DACA recipient in Tulsa who's been in the U.S. since he was 4 and now sitting in a detention center in Kansas. 3 states, y'all. There was no trial, no lawyer, no warning. Just gone. Let's go even deeper. This isn't just about cruelty. This is policy by design. Because here's the part that they don't want you to think about. This kind of terror, this state violence works. Not just by removing people from their homes, but by silencing everyone else. Because after the first few disappearances, people stopped going to work. They stopped sending their kids to school. They stopped going outside. And before long, the community dies in silence. Not because I swept every single person away, but because fear did the rest. That's the real strategy, and it's been used before. Let's go to during Operation Wetback in the 1950s. That is true. During Obama's secure community programs in the 2010s, and now once again under Trump's America First machine. This is how you erase communities without a single headline. And I want you to make something clear here. This isn't just about immigration. This is about what kind of country we're becoming. A country where brown skin is suspicious, where speaking Spanish is probable cause, where people can be dragged away in front of their children and no one can stop it. This is not about law and order, because law and order doesn't require unmarked vans. Law and order doesn't need no-knock detentions. Law and order doesn't disappear people into secret holding facilities in other states. What is this? It's control, it's political performance, it's fascism with a paperwork trail. And the worst part is that they're covering their faces, not identifying themselves. So that makes it even more of Gestapo police. And let's break it down like this. If your immigration system is so broken that it needs military-style raids, faceless agents, and secret transfer to function, then it's not broken. It's working exactly the way it was meant to punish, to disappear, to silence. And let me say this for the people who keep saying, well, if you were here illegally, no one deserves to be treated like this. There's no immigration status that justifies being taken without a warrant, without rights, without contact. We don't throw out the Constitution every time someone forgets a visa renewal. And here's the thing. Let's trade places. If an American goes to a different country and they get arrested or something, They have due process. But if the moment they don't get due process in that country, the same people screaming about the illegal immigrants here are saying, well, how dare they not have due process? That's the difference. This is what we're dealing with. The hypocrisy of the right is amazing. So what do? We stop pretending this is about security. We stop giving platforms to people who treat immigration like invaders. And we start telling the truth over and over, even when it's exhausting. Because what's happening right now under Trump's direct orders is an assault on freedom. Because when one group can be hunted, detained, and erased without consequence, everyone else is next. This is what happens in authoritarian states. This is what happens when fear becomes law. And we're not calling it out. We're helping it grow. And on top of that, before I almost forget, whatever the LA Dodgers did of stopping ICE to enter their stadium, it was amazing. Chef's kiss. Good job, Dodgers, even though I'm pretty sure you did it for PR purposes, but I'll take that for now. Good, it's fine. You're finally growing a spine. All right, so now in this segment, let's talk about the Supreme Court. Again, they are amazing at making headlines, and not for the right reasons. Because while they're basically handing out rights to corporations and stripping them from actual human beings and giving this orange orangutan more king powers, this week they decided to give something back, but to the gun lobby. And when they gave was the bump stocks. In a 6-3 decision, the court struck down the federal ban on bump stocks, saying the ATF overstepped its authority when it banned them after the 2017 Las Vegas massacre. You know, the one that this man went on full on and killed hundreds of people on a country festival. Yeah, the same thing. That's right. Those plastic trigger mods that let a semi-automatic rifle fire hundreds of rounds per minute, those are legal again. Because technically, the trigger still moves. And the court's majority, led by Justice Clarence Thomas, of all people, that man is as corrupt as he can get, said that unless Congress specifically updates the law, it's not their place to redefine what counts as a machine gun. Let's stop just right there. Because this decision didn't just make bump stocks legal again. It made the US look like the absolute clown show to the rest of the world. Now, international reaction has been brutal. From the BBC to Der Spiegel to Le Monde, global media outlets are dragging us again for treating gun massacres like weather patterns. And I quote from The Guardian, "The US Supreme Court legalizes the accessory behind the deadliest mass shooting in modern history." Let's go with Al Jazeera. Quote, "American exceptionalism." Indeed. As obviously it's a joke saying that we're a bunch of clowns. Let's go with El País from Spain, and I quote, "In the US, the right to own weapons outweighs the right to stay alive." And let's go even further. In Australia, Australia's ABC News literally ended their coverage of the ruling with the words, and I quote, "You couldn't script this level of madness if you tried." Let that sink in. While the rest of the world is moving forward, investing in community safety, enacting common sense gun policy, we're over here debating where a device that lets you shoot 90 rounds in 10 seconds is technically a machine gun. Spoiler alert, it is. Ask the 60 people who died in Las Vegas. Ask the 500 plus who were injured. Ask any trauma surgeon who had to dig bullets out of 9-year-old's spine. But let's go deeper, because this decision isn't just about one weapon accessory. It's about the legal system that's choosing semantics over survival. The argument from the court, especially Justice Thomas, the clown, is that the ATF went too far, and only Congress can define what a machine gun is. And legally, fine, if we're being generous. It's a strict reading of the law. But morally, it's an abandonment. Because they're not wrong that Congress should act, but they know damn well Congress won't. They know that gun lobbyists like the NRA, Gun Owners of America, and Heritage Action have bought and sold members of Congress for years. They know that bills like the Bump Act get killed before they reach a vote. They know the game and they're playing it anyway. So here's the real world consequences. So what does this ruling do? It re-legalizes bump stocks nationwide, unless your state bans them. It ties the ATF's hands, stripping the agency of regulatory power. And it sends a loud, clear message. Don't expect protection from us. You are on your own. Because unless Congress passes new law, and Republicans already blocked the last attempt, so they're going to keep doing it, there's nothing stopping the next Vegas. And don't be surprised if someone uses a bump stock in the next mass shooting, and they turn to this case and justify it. Now let's talk about the timing. The rule dropped in June 2025, just 2 weeks before the anniversary of the Highland Park shooting, where 7 people were gunned down on the 4th of July parade. Family van, flags, fireworks, strollers turned into a war zone, and now bump stocks are back on the market, right in time for Independence Day. So yeah, the rest of the world's mocking us, but it's not just mockery, it's heartbreak, it's disbelief, it's anger, because they figure out what we still refuse to admit. We have accepted that mass shootings as part of American culture, and that should shame us. So what's the takeaway? It's not about freedom. It's not about rights. It's a coward's move. Congress is they're too bought. The court is too detached, and the people who die, they're just names we say in candlelight vigils until the next time. If you're wondering why I sound like I'm that frustrated and angry, it's because I am. If the founders could say what the Second Amendment has been used to justify today, they'd probably grab a musket and fight back against the interpretation themselves. Or they probably would not have, they would have probably written a 10-page about what the Second Amendment really means. Because this wasn't a defense of liberty. This is a betrayal of reason and common sense. So here's a headline you never thought you would hear in 2025. Or if you're a Republican, you were expecting this because you love to do this. Because here's the headline. Child labor is back. And no, not in some developing country halfway around the world. It's right here in the United States, in Georgia and Iowa, and spreading across the United States. And I know, some folks will say, oh, it's just teens getting experience. Nothing wrong with learning to work hard. When back in my day, blah, blah, blah. Because let me stop you right there. This isn't about summer jobs or scooping ice cream at the mall. We're talking about 14-year-olds in meatpacking plants, kids operating industrial equipment, teens working night shifts on school days, all under the blessing of new state laws. Let's unpack this. So, let's start with Georgia. Georgia passed a new rule that let 14 and 15-year-olds work from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's 2 more hours a day than federal guidelines allow during the school year. Now, technically, states aren't supposed to override federal child labor protections. But Georgia is playing a game with language, calling it expanded opportunity. Reality check, kids are now working 6 hours or more on a school night. There's no required increase in breaks, supervision, or protection. And these jobs aren't all safe. They include they're not all safe. They include fast food kitchens, laundries, retail warehouses where injuries, heat exposure, and equipment risk are common. Georgia says this about empowering the youth. But when you give kids adult hours and none of the adult safety nets, that's not empowerment. That's exploitation. Now let's go to Iowa. It gets even worse there. The state that decided to break the child labor speedrun record. Their new law lets the teens work up to 6 hours a day, even on school days, up to 28 hours per week during the school year, more than double the federal limit, and in hazardous jobs, if it's a part of so-called work-based learning program. What kind of jobs are we talking about? Bakery mixers, circular saws, industrial laundries, slaughterhouses, places where people lose fingers, places where adults burn out. And now, that's where we're sending 14-year-olds. And if the business breaks the rules, they get a fine, just $2,500 per child. That's less than a new refrigerator. That's what kids' safety is worth to the state of Iowa. And let's be blunt. this isn't about learning responsibility. This is about giving corporations cheap labor and pretending it's character development. The United States Department of Labor has already said Iowa's law violates federal standards, and they opened over 600 investigations nationwide into illegal child labor, many of them tied to meatpacking and agriculture companies operating in Iowa. And what's worse, it's not isolated. It's becoming a national trend. Right now, 28 states are considering or have already passed similar child labor rollbacks. And we're not just talking about work permits. We're talking about bills that let 13-year-olds serve alcohol in bars, 15-year-olds work overnight shifts, and 16-year-olds skip school to staff dangerous jobs. This is the part of a coordinated national effort, pushed by corporate lobbies, anti-regulation think tanks, and yes, groups linked to Project 2025. Their goal? Rebrand child labor as vocational opportunity and make you think it's normal. And what are the consequences? This isn't just theoretical. A worker in Iowa was injured by a bandsaw at the slaughterhouse. In another case, 100 plus children were found cleaning meatpacking equipment at night in multiple states. Child labor violations are up 283% since 2015, and hazardous job violations are up nearly 100%. This is already hurting kids, and yet these states are doubling down. Why? Because it's easier to give businesses cheap labor than it is to pay adults a living wage. Because they know kids can't unionize. They won't push back. They don't have lawyers. And because if you're poor, brown, and in working class community, they'll exploit your children before they even pay your parents what they're worth. This is the America they're building. An America where kids leave school early to clean grease traps, where getting hurt on the job at 15 is just part of growing up, where labor laws don't protect you if you can't vote. So don't let them tell you this is about opportunity. Don't let them wrap exploitation in a flag. This isn't new. It's just the past coming back. And we've seen what happens when child labor runs unchecked. We wrote labor laws to stop it for a reason. So what do? We call it what it is, child labor. We demand federal enforcement, which protect our kids even when the politicians won't. Because if you only think standing between a child and a bone saw is $2,500 fine, then the system is broken, and we have to fix it. Okay, so let's talk about something that hits me straight in the chest. Veterans. And it's hilarious that this is happening after I recorded my second episode about the American war machine, and I just went on about how we don't treat, and there's a long history of how veterans are forgotten and we don't treat our veterans correctly, especially from the Republican Party. And then they do this. It's just chef's kiss of the hypocrisy. So let's start with what happened. It's not a shallow bumper. We want the veterans to be treated like this. We want to be supported, and then not in a shallow bumper sticker way that politicians love to roll out every November or slap on their campaign websites. No. Let's talk about the way this country really treats veterans once the parades are over and the uniforms are put away. Because the hypocrisy right now, it's amazing. This week, the same Republicans who salute flags, wrap themselves in camo, and throw tantrums if someone kneels during the anthem, they block a critical bill for veterans' mental health and housing. Let me be clear. They just turned their backs on the very people they claim to honor. So what does bill do? The bill, HR 1815, wasn't some French partisan wish list. It was a bipartisan VA support package. Straightforward, targeted, necessary. It includes the following: expanding mental health programs at the VA with a focus on PTSD, depression, and suicide prevention. Remember how many people die of suicide per day for the veterans? 17.8 per day. It could be 22. Just saying. Boosting funding for affordable housing programs and VA home loan guarantees to prevent veteran homelessness. Giving the VA new tools to intervene before veterans lose their homes to foreclosure, and direct support for survivors of toxic exposure under the PACT Act. All of this was covered in my episode, and it's still crazy to me that this is happening. And this had support from the American Legion, IAVA, Disabled American Veterans, and even veterans of foreign wars. Groups that don't always agree on policy, they were united here. It passed the House and with solid numbers. Then came the Senate. The GOP senators folded folded it into the one big beautiful bill. This Frankenstein of tax cuts, military industrial money grabs, and slashes to healthcare, education, and Medicaid. Even Republicans admitted they didn't want to vote on it because of how toxic the bill became. So what did they do? They didn't fix it. They didn't separate the VA bill and pass that clean. They killed it. They used veterans as leverage in a political poker game. And while they were playing games with people's lives, veterans were literally outside the Capitol, flags in hand, medals on their chest, shouting to be heard over the silence. Now, veterans in the streets, it's not just on the battlefield, guys. Like from Oklahoma to Pennsylvania, from Austin to Atlanta, protests erupted. And the most powerful one, veterans protesting at the D-Day Memorial in Normandy, saying, and I quote, we were broken on the battlefield. Don't break us again in Congress. Others held signs reading, they send us to war, then leave us in debt. I was willing to die for this country. Why won't it help me live? These are not slogans. These are cries for help. And let's not forget, this isn't the first time. This has been a pattern by the Republican Party. In 2022, 42 Republicans tried to block the PACT Act, which expanded care for burn pit survivors. Why? To teach Democrats a lesson, to own the libs. This year alone, 2,400 plus VA employees, many of them veterans themselves, have been laid off, leaving hospitals and counseling centers understaffed. Meanwhile, Trump's new military budget plan includes increased funding for defense contractors, but a net cut to VA health programs in 2026. So let's pretend that this is about money, because it's not. It's about the priorities, and the GOP only cares about their bottom line. They're a bunch of hypocrites, a bunch of cowards, and I hate them with a passion. And let me speak from the gut. You know who I am, and I'm not going to keep saying this. And I've stood against men and women who gave more than I ever could. People who came back with broken bodies, fractured minds, and nothing waiting for them but paperwork and excuses. So yeah, I'm angry because that's what these lawmakers are doing. It's a coward's rap in patriotism, photo op politics at the expense of people who actually live the consequences of the wars they love to vote for. Here we are again, another one. You can't say support the troops while defunding the clinics that we go to for when we are suicidal or we need help. You can't say love America while letting veterans sleep in tents on the same streets they fought to defend. And it's crazy because when they see those veterans, they don't care about them. They spit on their faces. And you damn sure can't wave the flag while slapping it in the face every time you vote down their benefits. So next time you hear politicians about supporting our troops, ask them how they voted on the House Resolution 1815. Ask them why a war hero with PTSD has to wait 3 months for a counseling appointment. Ask them why a veteran with 3 kids is on the verge of foreclosure because the VA funding they blocked could have saved their homes. Support isn't a slogan, it's a choice. And these leaders keep choosing rhetoric over results. So to every veteran out there watching this mess unfold, I see you, I hear you, and we will not let them forget you. Because you kept your promise to this country. Now it's time for these politicians to keep their promise to you. All right, so let's wrap up this episode with something that was going under the radar because it's each week, each day feels like months and years with this administration. It feels like we're aging 10 years every day. So let's wrap this episode with something that flew under the radar, but cuts to the heart of what's wrong with American politics right now. Let's go back to our favorite states, everybody. Let's go to Florida with our favorite person of all world, Governor Ron DeSantis. Governor, piece of trash. Governor who is a rat wearing a suit. And the far-right State Board of Education, they have officially banned pride flags on what they call politically divisive symbols in all public school classrooms. I bet you money they will fight to the nail if there was a Nazi flag. They will protect the Nazi flag, though. The ruling was finalized this week, just days after hundreds of Florida students walked out of classrooms in support of LGBTQ plus teachers and classmates during Pride Month. And what is the state's response? Not to listen, not to open dialogue, but to ban the rainbow. And what does this say? Here's the language they use, and I quote, "No classroom may display flags or signage that promotes political ideology, including but not limited to symbols associated with gender ideology, critical race theory, or partisan viewpoints." Let's be clear, this is deliberately vague, designed so they can ban anything that doesn't toe the state-approved line. But the targets are crystal clear. Pride flags, trans allies posters, Black Lives Matter stickers, safe space decals. Meanwhile, thin blue line flags, Gadsden flags, or the pro-gun imagery, probably even the Nazi flag, that totally fine because their politics dominate the classroom. It's patriotism. But when anyone else shows pride, solidarity, or support, suddenly it's indoctrination. God, this guy is oh God, I cannot wait for this man to be out of the office. So let me say this. This isn't about neutrality. This is about erasure. And it's not about keeping politics out of school. It's about controlling which politics kids are allowed to see, hear, and believe in. It's about telling LGBTQ plus students, your identity is inappropriate. It's about telling queer teachers, stay closeted or you're out. And it's about sending a signal to every non-conforming kid in Florida. You don't belong here. And the irony, these are the same politicians who scream freedom and parental rights anytime someone critiques book bans or mask rules. But apparently freedom of expression doesn't apply if you're gay, trans, non-binary, or just supportive of people who are. Again, every time this is the pattern. Every episode I say something that is obvious, but of course nothing's going to change because the politicians and the people who are there are supporting fascism and they love it. And now let's go with the bigger picture. This part of the larger trend sweeping Republican-led states. Texas, teachers can be fired for displaying pride flags. In Oklahoma, Ryan Walters had declared that LGBTQ plus ideology has no place in education. Comes from the man who is a fucking coward. In Tennessee, books with LGBTQ plus characters are being pulled from shelves, often without parent or staff input. Now, let me go back to Ryan Walters. This is the same man who used tax money to do his campaigns. Nothing else. He should be in jail for state using state funding for his campaigns. It's just not about one flag in one classroom. It's about rewriting the culture and controlling who gets to feel safe in public schools. And this is dangerous because when you make queer students invisible, you make them vulnerable. We've seen this, guys. We've seen what happens to any student who is gay, lesbian, queer, anything like that. They get bullied to the point of suicide. And what did the politicians say? Well, they should have stayed in the closet. It's not my fault. It's like students in Miami, Tallahassee, Orlando have already started organizing. They've done walkouts, chalk protests, writing "You can't erase us" in rainbow on sidewalks, and showing up to school board meetings wearing pride pins in defiance. Some teachers are risking discipline to leave small rainbow stickers in desk drawers or tape affirmation notes to classroom walls. One high school senior said it best, and I quote, "When you're 17 and you hear your governor say you're a problem, it sticks with you. So if they take down the flag, I'll just wear it." Let's not sugarcoat this. Florida isn't banning pride flags because they're too political. They're banning them because they're powerful. Because the flag that says you are loved is a threat to a political party that thrives on fear. Because students who feel safe, seen, and free to be themselves, they don't grow up angry and obedient. They grow up confident and dangerous to authoritarian thinking. So if Florida is going to ban that kind of hope, we got to carry it elsewhere, and we got to say the quiet part aloud. This isn't just censorship, it's cultural warfare, and we're not surrendering. And Ron DeSantis, I hope you have a good lawyer because you'll need it by the time you get out of office, because you're going to be in jail for all the illegal stuff you've done. You deserve to be in jail. So now let me just finish this episode this way. And it's happening again. Another war, another lie, another group of politicians cheering from the sidelines like they're watching a football game, while someone else's kids get sent to die. Like this week's airstrikes in Iran are just some isolated strategic action. They're the opening scene of Iraq 2.0. And the worst part, the people are cheering somehow, but like technically this is the most unpopular thing ever. Like 85% of the people of the population are not approving of this war, but it's gonna happen. Like it's not just the politicians and the voters too. The same ones who scream America first are suddenly thrilled that we're dropping bombs on another country. The ones who were screaming for no more wars are happy this is happening. The same ones who are saying that we're spending too much on social programs are silent while billions go into missiles and stealth bombers. And the same ones who say they love the troops are nowhere to be found when it's time to actually protect them. And let me say this to the folks who voted for Trump, the ones still standing by him after everything. If you support this war, you should be the first in line at the recruiting office. Not your neighbor, not the working class kid from East LA, not the first gen college student from Tulsa. You, the one who voted for him to this point. Because I'm tired of watching people who vote for war act shocked when the bombs come home. I want the politicians who are loving Trump, I want them to be the first ones on the front lines. Because I'm tired of watching politicians pose with soldiers, then gut their healthcare, slash their benefits, and throw them into homelessness. Because I'm tired of seeing history repeat itself while half the country roots for it like it's a WWE day. Like every single one of the stories we covered today, from Iran to ICE raids, from child labor to banning pride flags, come back to one thing. Control. Control through fear, control through silence, control through violence, whether state sanctioned, classroom approved, or congressional funded. The GOP doesn't want peace. They want obedience. And every time we let these stories fade out of the headlines, they win a little bit more. So no, we're not going to forget. We're not going to look away. We're not just to pretend like this is just politics. These are people's lives, people's bodies, people's futures. And if we don't fight back, not with bombs, but with the truth, then we're going to go back to where we were back in 2002 to just recently. Same war, different year, more bodies, more lies. And I'm begging to this point to my Congress people to start the articles of impeachment. This is not like, come on, man. Like, what else does this man need to do for you to do an impeachment process? And to everybody else who voted for this man, I hope you're happy. I'm pretty sure you are. So I hope you're the one in the first in line to go to war again. Hope you enjoy that. With all that, thanks for listening to Off the Record. Follow the show on Spotify and YouTube. And if you got the guts to confront the truth, even when it hurts, you're in the right place. We'll be back next week with this. Until then, stay loud, stay angry, and stay ready.